person. More than Wildman Fisher, who's an ear person who could never organize anything visually.
But Zappa also uses the eye. He also uses the visual to hide himself. So he will portray a freaked out, drugged out looking hippie, but actually that's completely what he's not. But he's
right. That's why you might say he's tactile synesthetic. He's pretending. Or he knows the American audience is visually biased. So he says, look.
A better way of putting it, Bob. He's playing.
Playing off the visual bias of people. So when he says this movie for your ears, he's saying you will hear it as a movie because that's the way you are.
Yes.
You Americans. And I like the way Barry Miles.
I'm very impressed by just the fact that they said his house was full with music he had written from the floor to the ceiling. They were really impressed by that.
Yeah.
He had, 10 feet of paper piled up against the walls or something of scores of what he'd drawn, what he'd written.
Yeah, and
piled that
he
high.
Was doing it non-stop every day, so it was really
wow,
impressive.
Very,
we'll have to see,
very impressive.
See if there's any documentary that comes out that shows that. Somebody should have footage of that somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one can see the vault is all these
that's
recordings in all formats. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
But he was, there's all this music too somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so let's continue. So that was his opening remark, that he was impressed at Frank's output, Frank's work.
Yeah, that
totally
he cannot be limited to be crossover. He was beyond music. He was into the environment.
Yeah, and that gets into tactility and synesthesia.
Okay. Weil er Lust hatte und weil er eine Leidenschaft hatte und weil er vom Komponieren besessen war. Und er hat halt vielleicht zufälligerweise noch dieses andere Talent gehabt, oder dieses große Talent, so ein hervorragender Rockmusiker zu sein. Aber ich glaube, dass er eigentlich immer davon geträumt hat, dass beides eigentlich nebeneinander und miteinander gut existieren kann.
Also es war nicht das erste Projekt von Frank Zappa mit einem normalen, sagen wir mal, klassischen Ensemble. Also er hat 1983 schon mit Pierre Boulez zusammengearbeitet, mit dem Ensemble Intercontemporain, hat 2 Aufnahmen gemacht mit Orchester, mit Kent Nagano und dem London Symphony Orchestra 83 und 87. Also er war schon sozusagen in der Szene eingetaucht.
Yeah, so he says he was really.
So I'll stop it.
Yeah.
So you can remember.
Yeah. He was really possessed by composing, and he had this extra talent. He was also a rock star, but they realized on the first place he was a composer, and he always thought he could do both things together. He had no problem with that. It was others that had a problem with his categorizing. That's very Gutenberg Galaxy. And the project manager says it was not the first time that he had already infiltrated the contemporary music scene. I think he worked with Pierre Boulez and the Ensemble Intercontemporain, and with Kent Nagano. If you like, now we have also a video of Ken Nagano talking about Zappa.
Okay, but before that, let's just hear a little more. So the project manager, the host, is saying, you guys weren't the first to do this. Frank had done other classical projects before.
Yeah, he was already being recognized. He is important. Many people already start seeing that he is really an amazing composer.
Not necessarily true in 69, 70, 71, where, well, mid-70s when he got the L.A. Philharmonic and some people in England in the early 80s, he said they were not respectful. They didn't rehearse properly. They didn't practice. They were sloppy. He said it was a problem with these guys, and he had to pay for everything only because he was, and they weren't, he would complain about them. That's why when the synclavier came along, he said, good, I don't have to deal with human beings because they resist me. So he wasn't happy with the works he did until these people. You could say these are the first people he seemed to be really happy with, the Ensemble Moderne. And that's because they were younger. They weren't these old fogies that he had to deal with in the 70s and 80s in the orchestras. Let's see. This idea that he didn't have these categories, he just applied everything to his ears, that's a tactile sensibility. That's where the ground is tactility. He's not identifying with the eye-ear movement. He's using it all as content, programming all the senses from a tactile position. That may be what the guy is trying to say, that Frank was not consciously a crossover. That's a limiting vocabulary. So I want to play a little bit more before we do Kent Nagano, to see what this guy, the MC, is saying.
Aber noch nicht als Komponist eigentlich der E-Musik tatsächlich en vogue, muss man sagen. Das hat eigentlich erst stattgefunden mit dem Yellow Shark Projekt, oder? Rainer. Ja.
Okay, so this is the next guy. Why are they laughing? What had the MC project manager said?
Yes, because he's the manager of the projects of Ensemble Moderne, so he's promoting Yellow Shark, and he says that there had been other projects, but this one was more important, more complex. And the percussionist answers, yeah. So everybody laughs because everybody's expecting him to go like, oh, blah, blah, blah. I think he's just like, yeah.
Yeah, it was overwhelming, is what he's saying. It was huge, way beyond their average projects, is what the percussionist is saying, right? That's an understatement to say this was more important than the other stuff they did. That's what you're saying?
Well, it was like it took a longer interaction between the musicians and Zappa. They went first to LA, and then Zappa came to Frankfurt.
Right.
And, so
you can see the difference. Yeah, when he has the carnival hat on, that's the rehearsals in Germany.
Yeah.
The ones with in the garage, Joe's garage is called, are a different environment. Okay, so let's see what he says, what the percussionist says.
Nein, ich denke immer noch nach über dieses Crossover und was auch immer. Wenn wir heute uns umsehen, mit welcher zeitgenössischen Musik wir es zu tun haben, oder mit zeitgenössischer Musik, dann stehen wir heute, glaube ich, an einem Punkt. Erstens mal, wir können es nicht einschätzen, wir wissen nicht, wo wir stehen, erster Fehler. Aber was wir sehen ist, dass wir haben Musiker, Ensembles, Komponisten, die auf die unterschiedlichste Weise an Musik herangehen. Es wird improvisiert, es wird sozusagen der große Gestus der neuen Musik ist quasi aufgebrochen und wir stehen heute vor einem großen, nicht mehr ganz zu fassenden Strom von Ereignissen. Und für mich gehört Yellow Shark irgendwie da hinein. Dass es nicht sozusagen etwas ist, dass es ein Crossover-Projekt war und jetzt machen wir mal einen auf Rock, sondern man trifft auf einen Mann, der schon längst davon ausgegangen ist, dass Streicher mit Bläsern und es gibt Musik, die ist ein bisschen, das nennt Air Rock'n'Roll, und dann mochte er Barrés, er hat nie von Modern Music gesprochen oder so, sondern oder zeitgenössische Contemporary Musik. Es war einfach Musik, und ich glaube, das ist auch diese große Energie gewesen in diesem Projekt.
Ja, Platz ist ruhig.
Okay, so he's going again into this thing, if this is crossover or not or whatever. He says, and now in contemporary music we don't know where we're standing. Everything is a flow of events.
Right.
And Zappa, or the Yellow Shark, was already part of this
flux
evolution. Yeah,
flux.
But it was not
the word flux?
Yeah.
He's saying where music is today, he's saying Zappa was there 25 years ago.
Yes, always, actually.
Yeah.
Because he says for him it was not about, now I'm going to make a crossover project, I'm going to work with
right.
contemporary musicians, and now I'm going to make a rock thing. He said he never spoke about serious music, the ernst music, or contemporary music, or rock. He was just doing his thing. He never had these divisions.
No category.
Mute.
Oh, okay.
Can you unmute Mike?
So he's like he's a kid playing in the sandbox with whatever he wants to use. Okay.
Yes, because I have the impression the director, the management director of Ensemble Modern, wants to sell this as the first crossover project, like something.
Right.
But the musician is saying, no, for him it was so natural. He never thought of that. But this is a crossover project, and I'm mixing rock and contemporary.
One thing that
the thing with crossover. The thing with crossover too, Bob, it's not just about the combining of the music. The bravery for the crossover artists was the fact that they were combining audiences.
Yeah, for him, for Zappa. And he was being a movie maker. He was crossovering media. He wasn't just limited to being music. It's like the Everine said, information. The Everine said they themselves are for information. They don't care what form it's in, what medium it's in. Any medium is useful to inform or educate or whatever they think needs to be noticed. So Zappa was like that on one level. He might have noticed the effects on audiences the way McLuhan talked about it, but he would use any medium that was available to him to make a message that he thought was relevant.
Well, that's what puts Zappa apart, is that whereas other musicians may have to have considered their audiences when they were crossing over, Zappa didn't appear to have that as a concern at all.
That's right. That's why I put Zappa as the competition of McLuhan. They both had media savviness, but Zappa said, "I'm only making the music for me, and that's all I'm doing." Whereas McLuhan says, "Oh no, the artist looks at an audience, says that audience needs updating. I'm targeting that audience." That it wasn't about him, the artist, him or her. It was about a mission to do something to the audience. So Zappa, if I said that stuff to Frank, he'd say, "Well, I don't do that. I don't care about the audience. I'm doing it because I want to see what it sounds like." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was trying to be Bob.
What?
He was trying to be Bob. Yes, because we're all cooking to get the real food for the transmutation.
Yes.
And call
You're on the right track. Yes. I encourage you. Right.
And thought he was healing the audience with his music, actually like
That's
Pythagoras.
Right.
And,
yes.
Yes,
and me. I'm always trying to heal everybody.
He already had this idea that he's cooking. That there is this cooking, like Ion is always talking about the mise en place. He's like a chef cooking. And,
well, what's interesting, Roxana, is
just make Carol. What do you want to say, Carol?
What's interesting is looking at the other Bob Dylan, and how when he tried to cross over, do something different, his audience went psychotic. They attacked him, and they went all personal. Whereas Frank, because he never demanded people to worship him, he just did his own thing, and people either followed or didn't. He set the stage right from the beginning, telling them to shut up and listen.
But, you know, Dylan didn't demand people to worship him. He came from an earlier time where the young baby boomers needed a leader, a symbol.
Yeah, but he didn't dissuade them enough.
Well, he quit. He stopped playing.
Which just, incensed them more to follow him.
Right. He wasn't, he even said in an interview in 1969, referring back to all that stuff he did in the early 60s, he says, I wasn't aware as I should have been. And he put out an album around that time saying the key is Frank. I think that he's saying Zappa understood it more than me. And Zappa did say, I watched Dylan do it. Dylan got there first, but Dylan didn't do it right, or people didn't receive Dylan correctly, so he said, I had to do it. So he redid Dylan. And maybe, and whatever the cultural message was, certainly didn't do him in music. But I've often talked to musicians, just a few had an opportunity. So what do you think, how would you put Dylan up against Zappa or vice versa? And they just go, no comparison. You can't compare them. So they wouldn't discuss it. I was always trying to get Dylan and Zappa guys to discuss this. And Ian Arlett, the guy I mentioned on Tuesday, one of my 5-year or more singular dialogists. Remember, I was telling, well, you guys didn't hear this maybe. I would live my life, and I'd find someone, and they'd be my audience for 5 or more years. So I do all my heavy thinking with them. Well, Ian Arlett was the guy in the 70s, because he was a folk musician himself, and when he was a kid, they thought he'd be the next Dylan. That was in Ontario. But when we were in Halifax, he was living in Halifax, so we would argue a little bit over Dylan, over Zappa and Dylan. He didn't know much about Zappa until I took him to a concert in 1981, right when this is being done, what we're hearing, I mean the Flores thing in April 81. So it's like October, November 81. Unfortunately, he had slight food poisoning. He ate something fucked up, so he didn't really totally enjoy the concert because he was, trying to probably stop from throwing up or something. But I then saw him in 91, 92. We both had gone to a Dylan concert, but we didn't know it. The other had, and I was not impressed with Dylan, and he was. So for me, the Dylan Zappa thing only got discussed a little bit by Ian Arlett, but nobody else would do it. Because there's a lot of people now, the music industry makes a big deal out of Dylan. He's the American poet, the greatest of his generation and all that. And I don't see him as that way. You can't compare them, but Zappa is a bigger phenomenon, at least in music, than Dylan. Dylan just gets occasionally a good song every now and then. Yeah, go ahead.
I can understand that you like Zappa because then you make the big, real crossover of not only music, but with Diane, you go into politics, into economy, into
our crossover is physical, non-physical. How's ever crossover? Physical and non-physical.
Because we are still having the effects of the Gutenberg galaxy, of the fragmentation and the limitations of programming. Like for some people, it's really hard to look into something like, if I am this religion, or I believe I am a communist, or into LaRouche, or into some sect, or wherever, I cannot even listen to that.
Right.
So this
and
is
Ian was probably reflecting that audience that can't listen to Zappa, wanting to throw up when he was with you, Bob.
Yeah, but I think that he liked it, but he was distracted by his indigestion. And so I was telling him, Ian, so this is the Bob Zappa point. Ian, you never eat anything before a Zappa concert. You fucking fast before the Zappa concert. But I didn't know he'd fuck up. But I was telling him later, I don't do fuck all. And when Zappa comes to town, I stay home. I don't go outside. I carefully get to the theater and get there in my seat. And I don't fucking move because it's dangerous. As we heard Zappa, a little while ago, we heard Zappa saying Perez was dangerous. Remember that? It's dangerous. You go to a Zappa concert, you've got to be on your toes because you're going to be transported to another dimension, you know? So Ian made a mistake. You don't engage your lowly senses on the day of the game.
Yes,
like athletes. They don't fuck before the game. Bert would know about that. He never fucked before the game. He'd lose all his energy. What, Roxy?
Yeah, in the mystery schools, the adepts confronted death to be freaked out. And Marshall McLuhan and Frank Zappa and you and Ion,
we freak
put on the audience this freak out.
Yes. We try to be the opposite count. It comes on all soothing, calms you down, makes you feel good. Oh, we don't do that. We're here to shake the shit out of you.
No, to just this crossover, looking into all angles, looking into many different things, to go beyond your program.
Go beyond your program, right? And even in the Bob Marshall interview with Zappa, he recommends to people that they watch Fox News, CNN. You have to watch different news programs. He actually, that's how you do your TV viewing. You don't stay in one channel. You look at all the different kinds of programming. So he advocated what you're saying in music. He did in TV watching. Said the same thing.
Yes, and I think John the Revelator was like Zappa. He could not really understand what is all these things he's doing really about.
Yeah.
He talks about images that talk and move, and the 666 actually referring to money. And
he probably saw
many
TV.
people are going to freak out because of they cannot stop believing in fiat money. That's a big shock. That's a real freak out. And all this, the revelation is about the freak out of the environment changing into something new. And it's such a freak out that some people cannot take it.
Yes.
Like you said, Zappa and Joyce and McLuhan are educating you, your perception, breaking the labyrinth of your mind, so that you can go beyond this programming.
Yeah, and McLuhan used to quote the Bible. Listen to this. He used to quote the sentence in the Bible where it said, we're here, it goes something like, you must give up all things in order to perceive. And I think it's the word perception. But he's saying perception is the most important thing. And you must give up all other shit, whatever it is, so that you can engage the real perception. That's quite an interesting quote. You don't hear regular ministers quote that one.
Yes.
What are you supposed to perceive? The analogy of consciousness?
Yeah, so as they talk more in the survivors of the collaboration,
that's Frank. Yeah.
They also go into this freaking out.
Okay, we're going to listen to that. Now, Mark Duckett's here. Mark, did you want to say something?
Yeah, can I list the drummers?
Yeah, can I just say, on behalf of drumming, hey, listen, Mark, I just said, on behalf of drumming, I said, here, Mark, on behalf of drumming, and you're predictable. So you're going to list the drummers at Zappa Head?
Yeah, we're going to start with Shelby Mann, and then we'll go with Jimmy Carl Black.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go to Terry Bozzio.
Yeah.
And Frankie Cap.
Yeah.
We're going to do Vinny Colaiuta.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could play him, but Ansley Dunbar is a mystery. He is the secret sauce. And then we got C.T. Chester Thompson on the drums.
Yeah.
But
Ralph Humphreys at the same time.
He's better on the organ. Arthur Dyer, who I have no idea who that is, and then Chad Wackerman.
That's he was known as Ed Marimba. Arthur Dyer III was a very accomplished symphony orchestra drummer who came into the Mothers the last year or two of them, 68, 69. He becomes Ed Marimba for Captain Beefheart. But he was the most classically trained and already in orchestras. Yeah, go ahead.
And then Chad Wackerman, who was phenomenal. So also in my notes, Carol Kay played the 12-string guitar on Freak Out. That's the only time she ever performed with FC. That's listed in Wiki. And
good.
Don Pardo is a narrator. Wasn't Don Pardo like
the voice of Saturday Night Live? He would introduce Saturday Night Live. All the game shows, wasn't that Frank Pardo? Jeopardy? I think so. Yeah, Don Pardo was the major voice in that world, yeah. And he liked Frank, and he came and performed in New York. When Frank was in New York, Pardo came and did something on stage with Frank. You know, he crossed over. He showed up in his body and did something, I think, in New York in 1976. But I want to add something. Look at the drummers on the Grand Wazoo and Hot Rats Part 2. There's two incredible, accomplished jazz drummers in those orchestras.
Yeah, they all swing. And I would like to give a shout out to Don Ellis. Tears of Joy was one of my favorite albums because it used polyrhythms and Brazilian rhythms, and it was a story. And he played with he played on the 1967 Absolutely Free album.
Yeah, or Lumpy Gravy. Could have been Lumpy Gravy. But yes.
Yeah, and Maynard Ferguson was one of those other people that did these impossible high notes, but Don Ellis was the master composer, died very young, died around 38 years, 39 years, but had Michael Levy on keyboards and two drummers. And I got to hear him live when I was in high school, and every musician carried a Fender Twin with JBLs in it. And I don't know if you know how heavy that amplifier is. It's like 120 pounds. I mean, it's a brute. But it was the most phenomenal thing I've ever heard off of that.
You mean Don Ellis, you're saying, used his amplifier? Is that what you just said?
No, all of his musicians had a Fender Twin loaded with two JBLs as their speaker behind each one of them. It was insane.
Wow.
It was amazing. And what do you know about Jimmy Carl Black? I mentioned that, and Billy Monday. Of course you know
I know
these guys.
about them. Yeah, of course I know them. I fucked their daughters, when Karen was around.
Who are they?
Karen was fucking Jimmy Carl Black, I got back at her. She fucked all the mothers, so I fucked their daughters. So the disease carried on. But I recommend this book, Mark. It's called Zappa and Jazz, and it's subtitled, Did It Really Smell Funny, Frank? Because Frank said jazz isn't dead, it just smells funny. And he distanced himself from jazz. But this book goes through all the musicians. They're all jazz guys. Everybody pretty well, except for Jimmy Carl Black. They're all jazz people. And it's incredible. This guy puts together all the albums, all the jazz drummers and everything. And it's like Zappa was. He was more than jazz, but it's not true that he had nothing to do with it. When you realize how many jazz people, accomplished guys with incredible careers, played with Frank. So in that way, Frank was a central switchboard. Everybody who was anybody passed through Zappa's world. That's what the people don't understand. That's why he's more important than Dylan.
But Bob, remember this conversation?
That's why he freaked out the musicians, because most musicians think of themselves, I'm a rock musician, I'm a jazz musician, I am a classical interpret or whatever, and and he will freak them out.
Yeah.
So that they could be free of this limitation of whatever they thought they were. They were just there to make all type of sound events.
Did you say Pythagoras?
No one wonders about...
Did she just say Pythagoras?
Maybe we could go on with the thing because we are going somewhere else.
No, but wait a minute. No, yeah, we're not going to go too far, but I want to just fill in Ainsley Dunbar. You say he's the mystery guy?
Yeah, he's the secret thought. Yes.
So he's 1970, 69 and 70 with the Hot Rats band after Zappa breaks up the Mother's Invention in August 69. So we were visiting Frank in March 1970, and the GTOs were in the house, and they didn't know us, so they wouldn't let us in. So we sat on the long doorstep, the rise of stairs, for a few hours waiting for Frank to come back from where we probably work in the studio. So he's still not known. We don't know what he's doing. He's broken up the band, and he's going to play in L.A. later that week. So we're interested in what's this going to be? What's he going to present now? We didn't know that he'd gone, unless I did, because I remember seeing the documentary on TV, but that might have been later. He did go to Belgium and participate in the concert as manager of Captain Beefheart. So anyways, we're sitting there. So we're sitting there for 2 hours. So what was our acoustic environment? It was somebody in the little cottage, which you can see on the front of the Hot Rats 2 album, the one where we spent with Motorhead, Jane's Motorhead Sherwood, with the doctor-looking drug dealer who was in trouble the night Zappa was playing with John Lennon. So in that cottage, someone kept playing a record over and over and over, a stupid little 45, and you'd play, and then the person would put it back on and play it. And this went on for 90 minutes. It turned out it was Ainsley Dunbar trying to drive us away. He was trying to bug us with this Chinese water torture of playing this song over and over and over, unless he'd fallen asleep. And the fucking thing was an armature thing that just automatically, went back to the beginning and played it. We never knew. But it was him.
Do you recall the song, Bob?
What? No. It was an irritating song. I don't know what the fuck it was.
I experienced that in the backyard with John Denver. This record kept playing over. It was Sunshine Something, and it played over for like 6 hours, over and over and over and over again while I was working. And it was like some vortex. And I understand what you were feeling. One more thing. John Lennon apparently performed in 1971 and 1992 on Playground Psychotics with guitar and vocals. Is that the John Lennon from the Beatles?
Yeah, John Lennon. That Playground Psychotics is 68 to 71, maybe. See, Zappa played with John Lennon in June 1971. No other time that I know of. And that would be on Playground Psychotics, probably, that concert that Zappa played with.
And you were there.
So there's and that big, no, we were at Zappa's house, in the guest house, waiting for Frank to come back, and we spent the evening with Motorhead, who was a kid who grew up with Frank, and he could play rudimentary saxophone, so he would be in the band, and he also could make funny snorkeling noises. All that snorkeling stuff, that's Motorhead. So here, this is ionic. The meeting of Zappa and the Beatles, a big cataclysmic thing. We had to be sitting at Frank's house to prevent the fucking earthquake. And you know what? that is June 71. 3 weeks before, we were in Austin, Texas, and I had a reading with Bertie Ketchings. She read my palm and that, and she said I was a spiritual gift to the masses, which was absolutely absurd to me that she said that. But she said, you will be getting together with two people, Frank and Gail. And while you're with them, there will be an earthquake. Well, that's what I'm saying here. 3 weeks later, we're at the house. Gail's nowhere to be seen. She's probably in New York. And we saved Frank's area from suffering an earthquake while the big earthquake between John Lennon and Zappa happened. We saved L.A. So Birdie predicted it, but we were there. So there's the significance there, Bark. There's the ionic meaning. We offered the ballast, the B-A-L-L-A-S-T. Okay, we got to get back.
No, wait a minute. You know what's even more amazing? When you played your CLK scenario that
CKLN. CKLN. Played what? What about CK?
You did this performance with all these different voices it might have been 2 weeks ago, but I heard it last week. That was hysterical. I mean, that was unbelievable. You were talking about stuff in your performance that was 10 to 20 years ahead of its time.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That was at the Larry's Hideaway. Yes, Larry's Hideaway.
Yeah, that was
January
amazing. 20. Do you have more of that stuff to put out?
Yeah, I'll play you. I've got the longer version. That's only 15 minutes or 10 minutes. No, 7 minutes. Very short. I can play you a 30-minute thing that happened a few months before that at the Beverly Tavern. And I'm pretty sure Newpelt was there. That's a good rant. I'll play you that one. Maybe later, late tonight. Put it into the audio. Yeah, that's where I start off. It's my first public performance. Everybody thinks it's fucking Bob Marshall, but he was too paranoid to fucking go public because he was the guy on the radio, not me, and he was known.
And so you did the voice. You did his voice.
No, I did the body. I did the body.
Oh.
Jack Tassi was a fan of Bob Marshall. He wanted their band, Rosie Van Tootie, to open for somewheres for Bob Marshall. So they set it up, but Bob Marshall chickened out. He was very paranoid. He did not want to be seen. He thought what he was broadcasting was very dangerous. He was the conspiracy theorist of it. He was afraid. So I knew I could do something because I taught a lot of what Bob Marshall knew. So I went to the club and performed. And you'll see I'm introduced as Bob Marshall. And I did the performance. And Bob Marshall could never have done it, but I did it, and that's what I'll play you sometime, maybe later tonight. The rant I did. But I had to have an introductory song, so I happened to turn on the local music, rock TV, and saw Madonna doing Dress You Up. I'd never seen her before. She was just starting. This is in 85. And she did Dress You Up, Girl. I thought, oh, that's a great song. So I entered my public theater performance world as a Dress You Up Girl. Dress You Up, maybe that's the title. Great song. It's sort of like her first video where she's coming down this big stage, big setup. That's how I enter.
Impersonating Bob Marshall
on the flow of Madonna before she was big.
Impersonating Bob Marshall.
Right.
Which nobody can really distinguish between your two voices in the first place. You guys sound so similar that you have to imitate each other. You guys sound like the same person.
You know why that is?
No.
Bob Marshall was an actor, and he became me as he learned my stuff, and for a couple of years just at my feet learning all this.
Oh, that's the missing piece.
Yes, he became me.
Yeah,
and he could sound a lot like me. That's where it happened. And then years later, when I interview him, he does not sound like that anymore. You can see it. What were you going to say? You going to say something else?
No, that's the missing piece, because he was trying to imitate you, imitating him. It was very confusing.
We like that. Yes.
Well,
we were Trump Leo.
Yeah, Trump Leo.
Trump Leo. We'll get back to this in a minute, Roxy, but let me just play you the beginning of that. That would be November 28th. Bob Marshall performs with Rosie Van Tootie at the Beverly Tavern. So you'll hear their set screeching to a halt, then a pause, then you hear me come in. I'll just play the first couple minutes. Now, I was down in the washroom or something, and I didn't know they'd stopped. And I hear someone, "Hey, Bob, where are you?" So I ran up. And I think they started the music, and I'm running to the stage. So always busy, multitasking, always late. So you'll hear the music. I got it on now. You'll start to hear the music, and then I come up. Is it going? Yeah. Now they're yelling for me. They put the music on. The Nugan Bank. If you look on my Facebook, which Bert is doing now, and look at the transcript from May Brussels, very long thing, but well worth reading, you'll see it ends with the Nugan Bank, the Fritz Kramer story. So, back to, Mark, that goes on for, half an hour. And I cover a lot of areas. So, we're going to go back to
Bob,
Roxy's
Bob, there's
point.
a hidden revelation here, Bob. There's a hidden revelation here, Bob. Well, as Ion is the hidden ground behind Lady Gaga, it turns out that you're the hidden ground behind Madonna.
Yes. That's why Madonna is the artist in my quadrant on the Tiny Note chart.
That's right, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and this is 1985, and make the chart 10 years later in 95 and put her in the Dobbs quadrant. Because, I'm a woman, so it's got to be a woman. I've got other people being the figureheads in the earlier phases. So, very natural. Very natural that Madonna and I go way back. Way back. And never liked her music, never listened to it, but she was the new icon that had to be adapted to Dobbstown purposes.
Very good.
All right? Okay, Roxy, we're going to go back to the translation. Is there anything you want to say about where we're at? Where the percussion? Did we play stuff that you didn't translate yet?
What do you mean?
Well, I just stopped it, I think. But we haven't
talking about crossover. No, I already said everything.
I don't know. What did he say? I'm just going to play a little bit of it. Go back. I don't think you talked about. He's saying.
It's yeah, we already did.
Okay, you make sure.
Auf die unterschiedlichste Weise an Musik herangehen. Es wird improvisiert, es wird sozusagen der große Gestus der neuen Musik ist quasi aufgebrochen und wir stehen heute vor einem großen, nicht mehr ganz zu fassenden Strom von Ereignissen. Und für mich gehört Yellow Shark irgendwie da hinein. Dass es nicht sozusagen etwas ist, dass das ein Crossover-Projekt war und jetzt machen wir mal einen auf Rock, sondern man trifft auf einen Mann, der schon längst davon ausgegangen ist, dass Streicher mit Bläsern und es gibt Musik, die ist ein bisschen, das nennt er Rock'n'Roll und dann mochte er Barres, er hat nie von Modern Music gesprochen oder so, sondern oder zeitgenössische Contemporary Musik. Es war einfach Musik und ich glaube, das ist auch diese große Energie gewesen in diesem Projekt.
Ja, klasse ruhig. Ja,
Okay, so what was he saying there? I don't remember that being translated.
Yes, is that where is the contemporary music? This is the flux of events that for him was normal to.
The flux. Yes, that's right.
Yes.
You didn't comment on my word flux. That's where I was incomplete. Yes, so they're saying art is in flux.
Ja,
the categories don't.
Ein Strom vom Ereignisse. So this is like a current of events.
Did you just say you missed it?
No, I'm telling you how he's saying it.
Right. He's saying that the condition of art in 2017, Zappa was already living it 25 years or more before. Is that what he's saying?
Well, that he never thought about, now I'm going to make a crossover project.
Right.
Or then I'm going to make a rock project. He said for him, any musician could play with any other musician, like he says, strings with brass or wherever. For him, it was just music. He was not thinking serious music and entertainment.
That's why. That's why the Evergreens are right to say that this will be known as the Zappa era, because where the era led to, a kind of tactile approach to composition and mixed media, Zappa did naturally and was the ground of that. Way before.
Yes, and I think it's a way to heal the labyrinth of the mind, the effects of the Gutenberg galaxies. What Ian goes, he says, look into that TV program or listen to this stupid song, because yes, it's like he's not saying read this book.
Right. He's saying you can get it faster. Do this TV show, do that movie, do this music, YouTube. Yeah, he speeds up.
Yeah, engage the environment.
Yes, right. Okay. You see, you got Krishnamurti, you got a lot of these gurus of the 20th century. None of them get to the mixed media level of Ion. That's what's unique about Ion. Mm. And those that...
Yes, nobody will mix spirituality with technology.
Right.
Or nobody will think this is the cooking we need to transmutate.
Right, and then not only Krishnamurti never produced a food. We produce foods on top of it. And they used to portray Zappa in the 70s as a guy delivering steaming Colonel Sanders chickens or burgers. I mean, they saw the food. Zappa was delivering food. That's where he anticipates Ion. We make the food. Okay, so they faded out. How did you make that? Make the images fit into every little yellow frame? That's good the way you... easy to do?
There are like these formats.
Formats, right. But you have to mark the timing, right? From 3 minutes to 6 minutes, and you stick it into that square.
Yeah, you cut, and they're called transitions. So they're
okay, right.
Every program has different types of transitions.
Okay, so now they're probably going to go to the third guy. Let's see, I think they are.
Nicht viel Zeit, weil der Film ja auch noch, auf den Sie sicherlich auch warten, noch laufen soll. Und die drei Herren müssen sich auch auf das Konzert vorbereiten. Hermann, wie war das? Ich denke tatsächlich, dass du durch dieses Projekt auch die Sprache entdeckt hast. Also jedenfalls habe ich die bei dir entdeckt, wie viele andere, glaube ich, auch in diesem Projekt mit Frank Zappa Verein, ja auch ganz am Anfang in Joe's Garage, erinnere ich mich an die Sachen, wo er was vorgespielt hat. Er hat seine Gitarre geholt und hat auf der Gitarre Riffs gespielt und er hat dann aufgefordert, einen nach dem anderen zu spielen. Und wie ist das gekommen, dass du da irgendwie dieses Welcome in the United States, glaube ich, war das, ne? Ja.
Naja, wir hatten, als wir ankamen in LA 1993 für die erste Phase, da fing es sofort an, dass wir waren natürlich auch überrascht. Alles, was wir gemacht haben, wurde immer sofort aufgenommen. Jeder Probentag war sozusagen eine Riesenaufnahme. Und alles, was wir gemacht haben, das waren Tryouts mit ihm zusammen, ist ganz stark von einer ganz anderen Form des Musikmachens ausgegangen, als wie wir das meistens vorher kannten. Und das waren dann auch, ich will es sogar jetzt in der Retrospektive fast als eine Art verschiedener Spiele sehen, die er mit uns gemacht hat, wo er uns Sachen vorgespielt hat, die wir nachspielen mussten, und wo er uns auch gesagt hat, ich glaube das erste Mal, als wir überhaupt Texte zu der Musik, nicht nur ich, sondern glaube ich alle, rezitiert haben, waren irgendwelche Texte, wo er auch sagte, lies irgendeinen Text, es war ganz egal, welchen Text. Und sozusagen mit dieser Art des spielerischen Rangehens, das aber gleichzeitig auch immer dokumentiert wurde, hat sich das auch entwickelt. Ja.
Yeah. He says to the pianist that he also discovered his voice in that project, and Zappa will ask people to play other instruments or to read text to the music they were playing, and he says he had like many different types of games they had to engage. and everything was documented. First, they did it in L.A., and everything was recorded. If I say, they had recordings for the whole day, non-stop. Everything was documented. So, and that they were not aware that he was already composing. That was already part of the process of making the Yellow Shark.
Yeah, that's a good point. They didn't know that they were being recorded in the rehearsals. And
no, they did know, but they were surprised that they had to do all these crazy things, all these little games, and they were not aware this is already part of the composition.
Composition, right? No beginning.
He asked him to read text to the music they're playing, to find something. And he's the one that made Welcome to America. That's how the project manager says, oh, you discovered your voice when you did the project. Welcome to America. And then he explains how that happened, that they had to play other instruments, they had to read text to their music, to the music they were playing, and that they were not aware. All these games were already part of the process of composing the Yellow Shark. They just were like,
right.
What is it?
And the mixing, visualizing the music by having text, reading, he was mixing the sensory life of these people. And you say he made them play other instruments that they didn't really play?
He said he asked him to play the guitar, and then they had to read text to the music.
Right.
And many different games. Well, he calls these things games. But
right.
He will have...
the piano player calls them games. Zappa didn't call them games.
Yes, but he says he had a very spielerish, it's like he was
playfulness,
doing these games like he was not seriously saying, okay, now we do this part and here's the music. They were like just having fun and doing these games. And they were surprised that everything was recorded. Like, what the fuck?
Right.
With all this. So I find it very interesting that he had all these games and he was recording and he was already composing.
Okay, what I get from that is like Zappa is living in the present with all the music and stuff, media. Everybody else is trying to specialize, even in the classical world. They must have looked what he called penguins in bondage. Everybody looked like a paralyzed idiot around him. And he was just saying, look, you don't have to follow the rules that they taught you in the German academy. Why don't you just try some different things? Then you can be a composer like me. Meaning him, you know. Everybody looked too frozen to him. So he's trying to loosen them up so they didn't live in these categories. And then they could compose like he did. I see that he saw people quite tight.
One wonders about their post-Zappa experience, Bob, whether they kind of got a little depressed after working with Zappa, because after engaging the environment that he was, it would be similar to engaging Irondom and then going back to watching CNN, you see.
Right.
So one wonders if they suffered after Zappa because of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, because sometimes Ion is doing also these type of things like, you know, you're asking and he goes into play that song or into some nonsense or whatever, but he's already cooking with you.
Yeah. And, you know, many people, after encountering me, they get depressed.
Yes.
They talk about this. then on the
next part. Okay, I was just thinking that Ian says I ruined the world on CKLN, so I depressed the whole world, get them all fucked up. If it wasn't for Ian, we'd still be a depressed world. Ian had to come in to save the world from me. I was just depressing everybody.
We will be still faxing and depressed.
Yeah. And not having a good time. I depress people by having a good time or representing a good time. And people didn't understand how you can have a good time and still think. That's what depressed them.
Yeah.
Think and talk. What? You can think and talk and analyze everything to the wick, to the quick, which will depress you and still be having fun. That was very hard to perceive. I think of Gurdjieff's layout. He had 5 centers, the intellectual, emotional, instinctive, movement, and sexual center. 5 centers in a person, and most people were stuck in 1 or 2 of them. I represent somebody using all the centers, plus pointing out the Android meme was imitating me.
Plus the interplay of all the centers, too.
Right. And Salvador Dali said pretty big things, egomaniacal things. But I think I've gone the furthest among humans, or pretend humans, to say outrageous things. Nobody says outrageous stuff as I've said before Ian showed up. Nobody got on and said, I am the Logos. I was here before the Logos and after it. Nobody has ever said that. And that was my opening sentence. Can you go up from there? Can you go down? Where do you go from there?
You go to Iron from there, Bob.
What?
You have to go from Iron from there.
Well, you go to Ion. That's a good point. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. You have to go to Ion. It takes 30 years of working on it. Well, we get there. Okay, so I play the next part, Roxy? You ready? Yeah, this is called Freak Out.
Yeah, that's the freak out you're talking about. Why do people freak out?
Yes. Okay.
Man sieht das nachher, finde ich, in dem Film ganz schön, wo ja gerade diese Entwicklung der Sprache stattfindet. Also das ist ja eigentlich ein Prozess gewesen, der stattgefunden hat. Und was ich auch sehr schön fand im Nachhinein, wenn man dabei gewesen ist und bei diesen ersten Sections dabei gewesen ist, welche Sprachlosigkeit teilweise auch bei Musikern des Ensembles da war. Ist das nur eine falsche Erinnerung, oder?
Ein Satz dazu. Einmal hat er gesagt, er hat uns irgendwie was gefragt und es ging nicht und Kanal hat nur gesagt, you know what, my guys from Rock'n'Roll, they just played.
Ja, das war, glaube ich, auch das, was nachher die Herausforderung war, oder?
Ja, er hat aber auch, glaube ich, gerne so ein bisschen so eine Müdigkeit provoziert und auch erstmal eine Ratlosigkeit, auch eine gewisse Art von Leere. Ich erinnere mich, dass wir manchmal stundenlang über einen einzigen Akkord improvisiert haben und hat immer gezeigt, ob die Leute, wer der Nächste soll und der Nächste soll. Und wir sind natürlich jetzt alle von Hause aus keine improvisierenden Musiker in erster Linie, sondern wir sind Interpreten. Aber das hat er, glaube ich, ein bisschen provoziert, damit wir erstens Mut kriegen, aber zweitens auch uns leer spielen und sozusagen dann ans Wesentliche kommen.
Das, was du vorhin gesagt hast, Hermann, es war am Anfang noch gar nicht klar, wie das Projekt überhaupt sich entwickeln würde. Also es war auch Frustration dabei, es war auch irgendwie Fragezeichen, was kommt da nachher irgendwie als Werk bei raus?
Ja, das stimmt. Und wir hatten dann auch kamen wir an einen Punkt, wo wir sagten, komm, jetzt müssen wir mal mit Frank genau Tacheles reden darüber und haben so eine Art kleines Versammlung inszeniert und er saß so da, wo jetzt die sitzt und wir saßen hier. Und dann fingen wir an so, Frank, what should we do the next year? Und guckte er so ganz ruhig und sagte, well, have you guys ever played in a hall with 20,000 people? Und dann war die Diskussion beendet, weil er hat einfach mit seiner Erfahrung und mit dem, wie er Musik gemacht hat, so überzeugend gesagt, hört mal zu, wir sind jetzt dabei, was zu entwickeln und es wird schon.
Okay, he asked if besides these games he had some type of Strafen, that means when you do something bad and you get these punishments. And he said...
that's what the moderator asked. The project manager said, what happened? Okay, and then the guy said...
Yes, because after a while of doing all these things non-stop every day, like very intensive, they were asking themselves, what is this about? And they were all confused. They were tired. They feel empty. They were really challenged. So they start discussing, like, what is this for? What are we doing? And
with Frank, Frank, they brought up with Frank.
Yeah, he then got into like a dictator, like it was even worse. That
what?
he
No,
would
wait, didn't
make
get that.
Just,
what did he? When they asked him, what are we doing? What did he say? A dictator? Did you just say the word dictator?
Well, he said he then reacted like he will make them play one single chord for hours, and he would just point who was the next, and they had to improvise. And they said, but we are interprets, we're not improvisation musicians. And he was like, well, no. He made them then improvise for hours.
Wow.
And,
Bob, can you unmute Bert?
Okay, just a second.
They understood all this was a way of making them have more courage and explore all the possibilities of what they could do. And
which is what I was just saying. They're all rigid puppets. They're all rigid penguins in bondage, and he was trying to loosen them up.
Yes, and also for Zappa, it was a method to see the character of each person and the talents they have. Like, okay, now you read the text, and he will see, okay, he can perform, he's funny, he can do nonsense, this one gets angry, and or he could see the possibilities, the talents of everybody, not only as a musician, but as a person.
Yeah. Right.
So they were not aware. They thought they were just going to get the music and play. So they were really shocked that they had to do all this nonsense and play games and for hours and really intensive. And they were really frustrated. Good. So one day they got like together, and Zappa was in the middle, and everybody was protesting and saying, "This is what is this? This is something we." And Zappa just look at them, Zappa look.
And
he
his
said,
approach.
Have you guys ever played for an audience of 20,000 people? And that was the end of the discussion.
His approach sounds very military-like. Like you remember, Bob, you said that a lot of his musicians compared to general. That's very military-like. Like he brings the people in, strips them of all their identities, has them play games to loosen them up, and then he structures them into what he wants them to do. It's very.
And that's exactly what he did with the rock band. He talked about that. He would play around with them for hours, and then find out what eccentric thing they could do, like Roy Estrada going and then he'd say, well, okay, you can do that. So he actually applied the same techniques as he did to his rock band.
Yes, and all the musicians were shocked. Like, he had the best musicians, the best jazz players, and he will make them play doo-wop and just play and they were really offended. Like,
it's great. It's great.
And people who were maybe not that good, he will then challenge them. Like he said, do your best, and then you will be really be beyond what you think you can do.
Right. Yeah, it's like
he was conducting a psyop.
Yes, he was doing. He said that once in an interview. He says, "I've been studying behavior all my life. I'm still doing it." he would put on the psychologist role and study human behavior.
Ian does that a lot. Like, he knows what you don't like. And he wouldn't say things to make you angry.
Yeah, you could see that.
You told me, he said, I'm your slave, and then for 2 weeks I could not even talk to you. Like, I was like,
I'm nobody's slave. I'm nobody's slave. And yet, I'm the only one who's been on my game with Ian from day one.
Yes, sir. That's true. That is it. That's the fun about listening to the archive. Bob was on point from the day one.
Yeah, he wasn't fucking with me. I'd been with the biggest mind fuckers ever. And this guy is going to try playing games with me. And when we watched the hologram, that was when I saw him starting to provoke me, but he had a smile on his face. You know what I mean? He was watching me, and you see that Bob would fall for this one. Saw that in the hologram of him. But back to, what was your last sentence, Roxy? You thought you were a slave.
Since I'm like 4 years old, I don't allow anybody to tell me what to do. Like, I will get my own
She was
clothes.
4 years old.
I was dressing very funny. Sometimes I see the pictures and I tell my mom, why am I wearing that? And she said, no, you didn't allow me to choose your clothes. You will choose this weird look.
You look at an old family album and look at pictures of you as a kid, and you were asking your mother, why was I wearing that? She said, I don't know. You picked them.
Yes, I will not allow my mother to dress me up like a doll.
Yeah, here's what's interesting. Roxy could read like when she was 4. So she goes to school, kindergarten or whatever, where they're going to teach the kids how to read. She can already do it. So she doesn't pay attention to anybody in class. She just draws and writes her own shit. And they eventually thought she was so distracted that she must have been retarded. So they went to the parents and said, I think your daughter's retarded. But it was like Roxy was more smarter than anybody and wasn't interested in learning the alphabet. She already knew it.
Yeah, so.
So then it evolved
that's
into
the
her
thing
older
with Dion.
No, let me say this part, Roxy. Let me say this. Wait a minute. Let me say this.
All the people.
Look, there she is. She won't listen. So I can't get her to stop. So let me add the punchline, Roxy. So later, her older sisters get Roxy to do their homework for her, and she loved doing homework, and they'd give her their lunch money. She was making money in grade 2. She had a business going on, doing people's homework because she loved doing homework. Woo. So. So what were you saying about Ion? You started to say something about Ion?
Yeah, that he might get you into this mood of confusion or sadness or anger, because it's a way of freaking you out to go beyond your programming.
Your mind. It's all to undermine the tapes you say to yourself.
Don't take all these things that
I get on there
so seriously.
This is my Zappa game. I get on there, and a smart person is asked a couple of questions, doesn't know what ion means, and shuts up. And they say, I don't know what to ask them. I can't take with that. Well, don't ask questions for yourself. Ask questions for someone else. Look at the book on your shelf there. Just say that title. The stupider, the better. They aren't ready for that one. That's the Bob game. I tell them that. Yeah. The stupider the question, the better.
I like your one, Bob, where you say, ask a question about something you're not interested in, and that really gets you going.
Yeah.
That's
a good one. And it works. People say, I can do that.
Yeah. We have to say that only Cha is not suffering this because she's so sweet. Dion is very soft.
Yes.
Oh, yes, but Cha better not count on that.
Yeah,
he knows who Cha. He knows Cha's a marshmallow and fragile. And she might be listening right now. Let's see, is she on there?
Oh, she's a poet.
Yeah, she's there. Yeah, she's a Gutenberg victim. A very sensitive poet. Very visually trying to recover her acoustic sensibility, or whatever it is. But the fair warning, Ion will pounce on you at some point.
5 sessions.
Well, you always say after the 5th session, yeah.
Yes, he says, we'll give you 5 sessions where we coddle you. Yeah, and every compliment Ian had been given to you for the 5 sessions will suddenly be erased. And you are the most disgusting fucking thing on the planet and incredibly fucked up.
Well, the funny thing about you, Bob, is the funny thing about you is if the Pope had brought forth the Holy Spirit, the Pope would have bowed and groveled. But you bring forth iron and then you tell him to shut up and mute him.
Yeah, I want to teach him about the fluid.
Like Zappa, Paris concert.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my greatest moment. I remember Ginny was shocked for weeks. He couldn't get over it. How could you say, fuck you, to the fucking non-physical God, Bob? How could you do that?
See?
That was her.
He's not here. What happened? Well,
he's
the
next
there,
was Bob and Ezekiel. Bob and Ezekiel. That was comical.
Oh, yeah.
If Bob could tell non-physical shut up, he was on Ezekiel. He was on Ezekiel.
Yeah, and
from
Ezekiel.
The start.
And I thought he was a spirit. I didn't know he was actually in the room. He actually was alive.
Yeah.
But he was he was pretty ferocious. He stuck to his guns. He refused to go off script the whole time. And I said, you remind me of some homeless guy in a New York subway. And Ian, Ian said, Ezekiel, because I was so rude to him, he would never come back. So every now and then over the last 5 years, I'd say, has Ezekiel gotten over it yet? No, Bob, he's not gotten over it. You cannot talk to him. Which is hilarious. The whole thing is hilarious, right?
Very hilarious.
Okay, well, let's go to the next part.
We're almost finished then. After Zappa said, have you played for an audience of 20,000 people, and everybody stood there in silence, then they said, he has a lot of experience, he knows what he's doing, we just have to trust him. And then he stopped doing that, but they had to get to that point where he said, that's it.
They had to,
and then they're ready.
Right. He had to get them to the point where they got angry and confronted him. He had to get them to really care about it. There's a problem here, Frank. This is not working out.
Yeah, he had to get them to a point where they could play back.
Yeah. So he one-upped them. Have you ever played for 4 million people at one time? No. I mean, who did they play for? Yeah, 20,000. Who did they play for? 300 people?
Usually contemporary music, no, it's
nothing.
Maybe 100. Yeah, it's concert hall.
Yeah, it's like the Perez people we were listening to. Was that Perez audience?
Music is never full. Even if they have big halls, usually.
Right. Never full.
Experimental music. It's your parents and friends.
Right, and then, and that's the world you were in. But look at what he did with the Perez audience. Whatever musicians were there, orchestra people playing, they did not know that they'd have that kind of fucking audience. And Zappa knew. And he handled them very well. It wasn't like being nice. He said, shut up and be quiet. The orchestra probably was pretty surprised at what the animals that Zappa had evoked for this sacred memorial to Perez.
Yeah.
And then at the end, they don't give a fuck about the musicians. They say, where's Jimmy Carl Black? Where's Roy Estrada?
He's sitting at his house.
What?
Yeah, he says somebody's playing. He must be sitting now at his house.
Yeah, doing that. That would be Ike Willis. He's sitting out there in San Fernando Valley doing nothing. Now the Mark asked about Jimmy Carl Black. He actually was the most popular guy. After Zappa died, and a lot of these old mothers would play in different cover bands, Jimmy Carl Black ended up playing with everybody because he was the coolest. He kind of looked like Zappa, even though he was the Indian of the group. He had a good sense of humor. Ben Watson says he was a great guy. He very relaxed about everything and not fooled by the situation, and in a way had a better way of being hip than Zappa did. More relaxed, or at least the bohos thought he was good. So Mark was asking about Jimmy Carl Black. He became the most popular leftover. And, when the mothers broke up, he had to go back to Texas and be a chef or, burger maker for years. Really got, really poor. But then when you hear Frank saying, this is 1981, that Don Preston is going to play in the Grandmothers, that's when Jimmy Carl Black, Don Preston, and a few of the other guys started touring, getting a little business as the Grandmothers. And Jimmy Carl Black was part of that. Yeah, I would recommend you go on YouTube, look at the long interview with Jimmy Carl Black. He has no bullshit statement about everything. I think he's even a little critical of Frank or something here and there. But that's Jimmy Carl Black, Mark.
Yes, and they were really shocked that they were expecting to get there, get the music and practice, and yeah.
So he was a therapist, a modern therapist, a modern guru, a modern spiritual teacher, all those things.
Yeah,
these are good stories
cool.
because
it was an initiation.
Yeah, right. And this is good to get these details. I don't see anybody else saying that. I mean, Tommy Mars said it was like being in a general's army, like being in an army, but there's not too much anecdotes about the techniques that Zappa did. So it's a very good. It took all this time till February 22nd, 2017, to find out about this stuff. They used to say back in the 60s, everybody, the baby boomer rock critics would come around, they say Zappa was a workaholic, tyrannical, too much time rehearsing. They really were afraid of him. He made it with too much work. So he had to get unknown guys who were talented, but unknown. He couldn't get any prima donna stars in his band. They wouldn't put up with it. And many of those guys went on to become stars, like Steve Vai, on their own. Okay, so let's go to the next part. This is titled Zappa for President, so let's see what that is.
Ich erinnere mich, als Frank Zappa bevor wir nach Los Angeles gegangen sind, kam er nach Frankfurt. Und das war die Zeit, tatsächlich, da hatten wir auf unseren Schreibtischen als Begrüßung stehen, Frank Zappa for President. Das ist leider nicht, das hat sich leider nicht realisieren lassen. Jetzt haben wir was anderes. Aber, oder? Das ist auch seine Arbeit, die er gemacht hat.
Ja, das denke ich auch. Aber inwieweit jetzt, in welche Verästelung kann ich jetzt nicht beurteilen. Auf jeden Fall hat er auch in meinen Texten natürlich bevorzugt, wo sozusagen auch die Kritik am eigenen Land immer sehr stark im Vordergrund stand.
Ich meine, Welcome to the United States, ich meine, bis hin, dass er natürlich auch auf die deutsche Vergangenheit anspielt und wir sozusagen wenn der Genozid kommt, dann sozusagen dieses Gas nachmachen mussten oder sich das so entwickelt hat bei der Improvisation. Das sind natürlich schon unheimliche Statements, die er im Laufe seines Lebens immer wieder gemacht hat.
Ja, aber auch zum Beispiel dieses mit den Narrenmasken und so, das war gleichzeitig ein unglaubliches Interesse auch an Ritualen in Deutschland. Also Karneval, was bedeutet das? Und hat sich das wirklich von uns genau schildern lassen? Oder auch diese Struwwelpeter-Szene, die ja, glaube ich, auch kurz zu sehen ist, die Rainer gemacht hat und so. Das ist ein unglaubliches Interesse an auch Figuren, die sozusagen ein disparates Verhältnis zum eigenen Land darstellen.
Ich hatte das Gefühl, dass er ist ja sehr viel von diesem Sinnklavier, mit dem er gearbeitet hat, ausgegangen. Also zum Beispiel bei einem Projekt, das weiß ich noch, Ruth is Sleeping, ein Stück für Klavier, was er geschrieben hat, die erste vollständige Komposition, wo die am Sinnklavier komponiert hat. Er sagte, es ist nicht spielbar.
Okay, you can stop, please.
Ich habe das angefangen zu spielen und habe das dann in Frankfurt, als ich zurückkomme, geübt wie verrückt, weil er sagte, das kann man eigentlich nicht ohne Elektronik spielen.
Ja, also es gab aber zu derselben Zeit auch ein Blitz.
Yeah, because they changed the subject. Yes, that was the time where Zappa had the secret agenda of becoming president, and another surprise was when they arrived, they saw these signs, Zappa for president, everywhere, and they were like, this is crazy, but what's that about? And they said, well, no. As we see, it was not realized, and we have something else, and everybody laughs because it's about, Now
what are they laughing at? Oh, now we have something else. They bring it up to the president.
Yeah, now we have something else. Yeah.
Yeah, you said earlier. Yeah, Zappa prepared for Trump. He didn't get to do much of it, but he would have been a similar president as Trump made, because he was libertarian. He would have not put up with any.
They thought it was about criticizing his own country. He's Zappa for president.
Right. He's too much of an outsider. How could an outsider be president? So they're shocked that this guy is in the mainstream, potentially, as president.
And then when they started improvising, and he will ask him about rituals in Germany, about traditions, about characters that somehow for them represented a disparate relationship to their own land. Like there is something they quote a character called Strumpelpeter and all this carnival nonsense that, like I said before, because all these things are associated with the Nazis.
Right. The Peter.
Hey, we're modern, we're the hip, we're the avant-garde. What is this? The carnival. And,
yeah, they think they're going to the avant-garde, the Bauhaus, the Duchamps, and here's this guy interested in the Peter Fiacre. It's a weird word. Some folk cultural thing. Pia Fracra or something. It's a long word.
And
right?
Yes, he then developed this piece, Welcome to the United States, that is sort of now very interesting with Trump limiting who gets out and in and all this.
Right.
But he made this Welcome to the United States also a critic about German past, and he will make improvise, and there was some points where it was really strong because he said they got into the genocide or
genocide.
Genocide. There is a rehearsal in the Food in Post-Industrial America. He asked them to go with their arms up, like, and then lower one arm. So they had one arm left up and go like zombies. And and they were like, oh, like, no. Some people said, no, we don't want to do that because it's prohibited in Germany to to say any
do that.
nasty words or do that.
Yeah.
So he said, okay, if you don't want to do that, do this other thing. But he was confronting them with their own past, with their history, with their own traditions. And he was very irreverent because he takes this type of hats that the Prince of the Carnival wears.
Yeah.
And he was conducting the Ensemble Modern with this hat.
and Roxy says German musicians are very serious. You don't make fun of the situation like that.
No. After they work with Zappa, and it's really amazing in the different rehearsals how he has all these hand signals and he's making them perform, not only to play very well the music, but to do all these different types of actions, performance, interactions. And he also has a lot of humor. And he has some, in one of the rehearsals, he says, do the flotando. And he's like, what is that? And then you do the flotando and then you go to the harmonics. And so he had his own language, his own gestures for conducting.
Right.
And he told them, be very aware that this can happen any moment. So they have to be like there in the moment, very concentrated.
Right.
And, yes, at first it was shocking, but then when they start seeing the results, the pieces, then they saw how brilliant Zappa really was.
And he said that. You're translating what he said.
Yes. And then they talk about a piece that is supposed to be so hard that is not playable. He made that piece with the clavier.
Yeah.
But there was, the pianist said, there was here an American companies that did manage to play the piece and sent the recording to Zappa. And they themselves in the Ensemble Modern, what they did is to play it with two pianos. Because
two people?
Single person, it was too complicated, too fast, too everything. But there is a version of that piece with clavier. So maybe you like to play that, and then we listen to the piece.
Right. Did you just say that two people would play the piece, or one person would play two instruments?
Two instruments, two persons to play that piece.
Right.
Because it was really difficult, and they say Zappa was not completely happy with that, but that's how they solved the problem.
Right. It's like in Phoenix Wake, you're reading along like a novel, and then it gets confusing, and you don't know it's shifted to a bunch of people talking, not just one person, a single narrator is switched to many people talking. So at the same time, Joyce wouldn't give you a heads up or a warning of that. So that was that. We find the piece. Are you going to send it to me?
Well, you can play just the end of the thing.
Oh, this. Well, we got. You mean so it'll be at the end? We're only halfway through. So let's continue.
Oh, I thought that was it.
No.
But then there is some music. Yeah.
Oh, the conversation will end soon. Let's see. Yes, you're right. We got another 5 minutes, so let's finish this up.
Der hat hier in Berlin gelebt, ein amerikanischer Pianist, weiß den Namen auch nicht mehr. Der hat ihm ein Band geschickt, wo er das allein spielt. Und es ist auch so, dass es machbar ist. Aber es ist gleichzeitig sind die Tempovorgaben so irre schnell und so extrem, dass es halt eigentlich eine bessere Lösung war, das auf 2 Klaviere zu verteilen. Und und das ist das Ergebnis, das kann man ja heute
auch. Ja, glaube ich, das Band dann geschickt, ne?
Ja, wir haben mehrmals. Wir haben Sessions zu zweit gemacht, der Uli und ich, und haben ihm dann das Ergebnis geschickt und dann war er einigermaßen zufrieden.
Einer. An dem Punkt ist, glaube ich, zu sagen, ist zufällig Ali Askin hier? Nein, der ist nicht hier. Schade. Der ist eigentlich einer der wichtigen Mitstreiter bei dem Projekt, weil es war derjenige, der sozusagen mit Frank Zappa zusammen die Partituren dann erstellt hat und ihm geholfen hat beim Arrangieren und auf die Ansagen von Frank Zappa das Material erstellt hat. Und Ali war ja dann noch bis zum Tod von Frank Zappa noch mit ihm zusammen und von Ali haben wir auch die ganzen weiteren Informationen bekommen für unsere CD, die wir dann 2000 gemacht haben, weil Zappa wollte mit uns unbedingt weiterarbeiten, hat immer gesagt, 1 year Rock'n'Roll, 1 year with you guys. Und wir haben ja schon angefangen, Varese aufzunehmen. Er wollte, wie hat er gesagt? Man könnte er wollte Varese mit uns aufnehmen und Webern aufnehmen, aber Varese ist dann da, zu seinen Bedingungen. Das führte dann dazu, dass wir in Universal Studios im Großen haben wir geprobt und er mochte aber das Mischpult aus dem kleinen Studio lieber, deswegen mussten seine Techniker Kabel legen von dem kleinen Studio zum großen und wir haben den großen aufgenommen. Also der hat es ernst gemeint.
Noch kurz eine Frage, also rein direkt irgendwie Rock'n'Roll und so, Schlagzeug spielt ja eine große Rolle. Wie war der Einsatz da bei Frank Zappa bei dem Yellow Shark Projekt? Was anderes oder?
Ja, natürlich was anderes. Ich gehöre nicht in die Riege der Drummer von Frank Zappa. Das ist einfach eine andere Baustelle. Das ist völlig klar. Aber für mich war es natürlich eine riesen Challenge bei diesem Projekt sozusagen als Schlagzeuger da aufzutreten und es war nicht ganz unspannend.
Ja, richtig. Ich erinnere mich an, das wurde eben schon gesagt, an die vielen Partituren, sagtest du Dietmar am Anfang. Wenn wir im Studio die Aufnahmen gemacht haben, nachher bei ihm im Home-Studio, haben wir abends gesessen und er hat dann gemischt mit Ali und geguckt, was kommt dabei raus an Partitur, was kann man noch machen und dann saß ich manchmal ein bisschen drum rum im Studio und dann kam er an und sagte, ich habe hier eine Partitur, guck dir die mal an. Oder sagte, ich habe alle Konzerte von dir aufgenommen, das musst du dir angucken. Und er hatte also immer schon eine unglaubliche, wie ich fand, eine Breite von verschiedenen Formaten. Er hat mit jemandem gearbeitet, der so Wachsfiguren und sowas, Wachssachen gemacht hat. Es gibt 2 Filme, ich glaube, die sind nie richtig rausgekommen. Er sagte, das ganz verrückte Typ, der lebte nur in seinen, also er hat alles, die Musik von Frank Zappa irgendwie so nachgebildet, in so Klebwachssachen. Aber wirklich jede...
He's going too far ahead. What did you laugh at?
Well, they're talking about this piano piece and how he had the project. He wanted to do 1 year rock and roll, and he said, and 1 year with you guys. So he wanted to start really getting into more serious composing, and not only do the rock was a way of financing these other things. He wanted to get involved, but he says it's amazing. They saw he was doing many other multimedia things, like there was a guy doing animation with plastilin. He will do
Bruce Bickford.
The everything, the music, and it was really a lot of work to take pictures of this and do the animation.
Yeah.
But he says that was not the only project. He had like a lot of different projects with different types of media, and then he asked the because in Zappa percussions play a very important role. He said, how was it like to work in this project? And he said, it's really like a complete different construction stone. That's how he says. Andere Bausteine.
Construction stone, S-T-O-N-E? A rock?
Yeah, yeah, that's what he said. He was really challenged by Zappa, and he said it was not without stress.
Yeah.
And everybody laughed because after what they said that they were all really tired, freaked out, angry, whatever. It's like
he didn't have to say that. Everybody knew
it was not easy. It was not easy. But yes, it's a pity that that he not only wanted to have a rock band, but now he wanted to have a small orchestra to work.
Right. Awesome.
Parallel with
Bob Michael's on mute.
Okay. And is Alyssa here? Alyssa's number's here. Unless that's Alyssa, I think. Or is that Nate?
And there was a guy called Ali N. Khan.
The guy from Pakistan?
What was his name?
Yeah, I got Alyssa's number. Maybe she's not there now, but she was here for a minute. So, Ali.
Yes, so he asked, is Ali in the audience? But he was not. And he said, Ali N. asking. He also played in the Zappa. He was like the assistant of Zappa, and they will they will play the whole day and record, and then they both will listen to this and transcribe things that they thought were interesting. So the work involved, like everyday work, he was like squeezing these musicians and then listening to all the recording, doing the transcriptions of the music, and then the next day he will have some music, and he would show them, hey, look, we have some music, try it, play it, let's see. And because Zappa had this, he will compose some things, he will just write himself down, but then he was conducting the improvisation with his hand signs, but the musicians had some freedom, like he will say, okay, you play a note, and that will create a chord when everybody was together, and he will go like, no, I don't like that, but I like that. And then he will write that down. That's very hard. It's like a type of very complex dictation. Yeah. But, he was really amazing. He will transcribe these improvised surprises and accidents and whatever that he thought were interesting, and he will include that in the music. So he had the things he thought himself, but then all the transcription of the improvisation that they had done during the day. So it's really a lot of work.
Partly why the original mothers of invention sued Frank, because they thought that they should get some of the royalties. And they would say in interviews, they contributed a lot. They were doing all stuff like that, making chords happen. And Zappa would then fit in his music, and he'd get the money for it. Like, if he got them to make a chord, the orchestra there, they should, we created that. But I guess it was blurred, so nobody was certain about it. But the mothers did sue.
Well, but the thing he was conducting the improvisation. He had a lot of control of what was going on, but some things were really like accidents. It was not all the creation of one musician.
Right. So you're saying it's very hard to write down a chord, an accidental chord?
Well, like if they're playing very complex things, and
the context
many people at the same time, and he's listening to that, and he's writing all these things down, like a dictation.
That's wild. That's wild. Even
was he writing it down as they were playing, Or did they stop and wait for him to write down, or he was writing?
When we have to listen a little
It was in the re-listening sessions.
Yeah.
When Zappa would re-listen to the recordings of the day.
Because just play a little more, and then they say something about that.
Right, but are you, Michael, you're saying that Zappa would write it down when he reheard the recording?
Yeah, he would re-listen to recordings after the day sessions, and then, like Roxy was saying, they would pick up on something that works, and then Zappa would put that into music notation, and then throw it in front of the band the next day and see what they would do with it. They were, and as well, that person was also archiving for him and sorting out, so he was archiving, recording, writing, and experimenting and adventuring all at the same time.
Yeah, that's
yes,
Ali.
And then they understood.
Ali did that.
Ali and
Ali did that, right?
Yeah, and they then understood. Oh, we thought we were just doing nonsense and games, but then they saw the transcriptions of all these things, and they were really impressed. Like, ooh, it was really working.
Yeah,
Zappa was very into creating a spontaneous environment and then capturing creations out of that spontaneous environment, which is why he recorded everything.
Yeah, he had to loosen
everything
them up.
has a different energy when he's improvised and when he's just...
He was... it wasn't a rehearsal, it was a recording session.
Yes.
It was many things at the same time.
Yeah.
It was...
that's important for you to...
Therapy, it was creation...
I've never read any interviews with them. There might be some out there, but this is important to get this translated because otherwise we won't know what Zappa did to people. Now we know.
Yes.
At least what he did to them, and I'm sure he did it with his rock musicians.
Well, anyone who writes music or composes will tell you, Bob, that the first time you play something is the thing, and then when you repeat it, it gets further and further away. And that's what Zappa knew. He wanted to catch the first time and not come back and try and recreate it.
Yeah. Well, he had a lot of energy to do all this all day long.
Well, he was in it for the money, Bob, didn't you know?
What did you say, Michael? What did Michael say?
I said he was in it. He was in it for the money. That's why, Bob.
That's right. Yeah, so he can do it more, not to buy things, but so he could keep being extra productive. Needed the money to keep going.
I was thinking.
No, but I was being a bit sarcastic there, Bob.
Okay.
Because he really wasn't in it. He was doing it because he really wasn't in it for the money. If he was in it for the money, he would have had a different approach.
But I took your sarcasm and turned it into a positivistic statement about not being positive versus negative, but a positivism in science, a practical, experimental, hermeneutic, what's the other word, empirical effect. Needed more money so he could keep doing it.
Yep.
So this is where Zappa's an invisible environment. People don't know that they had a tremendous giant among themselves.
Yeah.
Yes, and that he was doing this with all this humor at the same time. It's really brilliant. This is really... I think it's really ironic because this transcribing the improvised and the surprise, the irrational, the not thought, it's like the autonomic things that nobody even can explain how they were made. It was just in the moment and it was perfect, and that's the autonomic, what Ion calls this newing.
And remember, McLuhan said that he created by thought, but thought did not come, the process. He created by the process, but it did not come from thought. That's what McLuhan said recently. We just found that. He did not create from thought. That's McLuhan.
And Iron does a similar thing or I don't know if it's your agreement with Iron or Iron with you, but in requiring that every time Iron speaks, it is recorded. So there's a knowing that it's got to be captured in the moment. There's no repeat. No repeat.
No repeat. No repeat?
No repeat.
And we're composing
by who?
Us?
Well, Ian often says we don't repeat ourselves.
Right. And my first experience of that was in 1977 from Joe Keogh, who worked, it was a student of McLuhan, who Mary McLuhan told me was a pest because he's always around the house, and he wasn't a cute guy, so all the daughters didn't like this schlub around the house. But he organized the bibliography for the Gutenberg Galaxy, so he invited me out to his class one day at York University, and driving back in, we were talking, and he said something. I go, "What'd you say?" He says, "I don't repeat myself, Bob." I thought it was the most so rude fucking thing I've ever experienced. I mean, I pay attention to people. I listen. And he was talking, and he said something, and I wanted to get what he said, and he said, "I don't repeat myself." Boy, that was a shocker. Then I kind of realized he might have got that from McLuhan, but you've never done that to anybody. None of you radical people, have you?
No.
None of you rude people out there.
What did you say? What did Roxy say?
Yeah, in the concert, Frank Zappa says, "You rude people, you're so rude, but that's good. You rude people need to listen to this."
Right, he complimented them on being rude, right? That's what you're saying. Yeah. What was the reason? Well, how did he compliment them for what? What reason?
Because they were interrupting, and he was trying to explain the embarrass.
But he said it was okay. Rude. They were rude. I guess he didn't want to be classy. Yeah, he said, that's good. Both sides of his dilemma, he's saying. But I always repeat myself. I would never say I don't repeat myself. Anarchy.
Yes. So maybe we can really finish now, and then we listen to the non-playable piece.
All right.
With the synclavier.
But think about that. I don't repeat myself. Joe Keogh was pretty unique. McLuhan had turned him into a unique person. He was saying stuff to me, telling me stuff, and I had to totally catch it all the first time. Jeez. Very unreasonable.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got this guy. Is the project manager a musician, or is he just their manager?
No, I suppose he's a musician, because usually all the engineers, the technicians, they all, at least, even if they don't play, they don't know music, and they have to read the music. Like in the concerts, you see the technicians, they have the music, and they're reading the music as it's being played, and they're really mixing and doing
right,
like a very good job mixing. Yeah, so right. I think he must be a musician to be in charge of their.
Right. So what is he saying here? I'm going to just go back a bit and tell me what he's very excited and talking.
Faxsachen gemacht hat. Es gibt zwei Filme, ich glaube, die sind nie richtig rausgekommen. Da sagt er, das ganz verrückte Typ, der lebte nur in also er hat alles, die Musik von Frank Zappa irgendwie so nachgebildet in so Knetwachssachen. Aber wirklich jede
What's he talking about
he's talking about the guy that does the animation of the music of
Bruce
Zappa.
Bickford. Bruce Bickford.
Yeah, that he's
yeah.
So
you know what he do?
Besides, he was doing all these projects, and he talked about this as an example.
Yeah, you can see samples of it on YouTube. There's one section in one of Zappa's videotapes where he's interviewing Bruce, and Bruce was kind of autistic almost, but he would have a little clay figure. He'd move hand to make a movement. The arm would be moved, the little clay figure. He'd move it slightly. Then Zappa would click it, photograph it. Then he'd move again. So this tedious millions of little moves that had to be photographed every move. And that's how this guy did it. Just before digital technology, I guess, came in, before he could.
Yeah, so they were impressed that he was also involved in so many different things, organizing things, producing things, and multimedia technologies. Really, I mean,
and it begins with
really, it was
showing
really brilliant.
Right, and they show up. And the first thing they see is Zappa for president, and license plates.
And it was not a joke.
Yeah, not a joke. You just mentioned, what was your last idea there? Many projects. Oh, yeah. When the Evergreens, so I talked to Zappa through the Evergreens, then they're finished, and Zappa goes away, and then Michael wakes up, Michael Blake Reed, the medium. And at some point, I think you can read it in my transcript, he's dreaming that he's talking to Zappa when he's in trance. And he saw that he says to me, Zappa had many projects going. And Michael asked Zappa, well, you can do all these different things. How come they're not happening or something? Zappa said, the name Zappa shuts a lot of doors. And then Michael said, well, why don't you change your name? And he says that Zappa, the ghost, says, that's a good idea. And so Zappa had forgotten to change his name to get some things done. But Michael Blake Reed said he'd never looked inside a person's brain. And they looked in Zappa's brain, and he could see all the projects. This is in his dream state. He could see all these amazing projects Zappa was doing. So he was your, Leonardo da Vinci kind of genius.
Yes, yes, and he had this passion. Like, really, he could not stop composing. With this passion, with this complete...
genuine curiosity about his phenomena of his life. So let's play the rest of this part. Not too much left.
Also musste ja wieder, jeder einzelne Schnitt musste neu fotografiert werden. Das war eine unglaubliche Arbeit. Von solchen Sachen hatte der eine große Menge an Sachen. Der war eigentlich so breit aufgestellt. Das war immer eine große Überraschung.
Sämtliche News hat er immer mitgeschnitten. Jeden Tag, also die Videorekorder, die gingen automatisch von alleine an, wenn irgendwo News kam. Und dann natürlich dann da die ersten Sachen hat er natürlich dann irgendwie auf Lager gehabt, ja. Wo Leute nachts um 4 geweckt worden sind und irgendwie gar nicht genau wussten, was sie sagten. Und das hat der dann alles vorgespielt. Ja.
Und das Interessante ist auch, dass er natürlich auch aufgrund von Aufnahmen, die wir ihm ganz am Anfang geschickt haben, dann Ja zu dem Projekt gesagt hat. Und das waren zum Beispiel eine CD, wo wir gerade diese Player-Piano-Stücke von Dan Caro aufgenommen hatten. Und das ist natürlich etwas, das Player-Piano ist ja quasi eine Vorform von so einem digitalen Instrument wie das Synthklavier. Und ich glaube, das hat ihn auch fasziniert, dass wir das gemacht haben. Also dass wir damals so diese Ästhetik übertragen haben auf unser Spiel. Weil es ja alle Stücke waren, die ursprünglich für mechanisches Klavier geschrieben haben.
Ja, wir wollen uns noch den Film angucken. Ihr müsst euch noch ein bisschen vorbereiten. Ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich. Wir haben festgestellt, es ist genau 25 Jahre her, dass die Uraufführung war in Frankfurt in der Alten Oper, also ein kleines Jubiläum für uns. Ich freue mich wahnsinnig auf den Abend, ich hoffe ihr auch und Sie auch. Wir gucken uns jetzt den Film an, The Making of The Yellow Shark. Vielen Dank, bis später. Herzlichen Dank.
So, what was the final points made?
Yes, they talk again about how everything was recorded from the beginning, but then they said some people were awakened at 4 a.m. at there was Zappa talking about something and playing things and talking about music, and they were, what are you talking about? What is this? Because he was like non-stop composing.
You mean he would call them up, wake them up in the middle of the night? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like, oh yes, here, I have an idea for you. You have to play this, whatever.
That's what McLuhan did. McLuhan would phone his colleagues at 4 a.m. and tell them, I got a great idea, a new idea.
And besides
that's a good
their
story.
project,
what?
They were really impressed because the pianist said, besides all this work on the composing and the transcribing and working all day and night, he will also show them other projects, other recordings he was working on, like some recording of a piece of Nankarov or something he did with their Synclavier, and other recordings or remixes he was also working on. So it's really like they saw this guy is a real composer, and he has the talent of also being a rock star, but he's a composer.
Yeah,
and well, they're very proud that this work was made for them, and to have the experience to see all this process and